With at least 100 official X-Men, some are bound to slip through the cracks. It's hard to have a weird backstory in the Marvel Universe, everyone seems to have one, and yet somehow Eva managed to have the weirdest I've heard. EVA, or Eva, was grown in the body of a man. She was his nervous system in physical form. The man in question here is Phantom X, which we will get to in a second. While in her early stages, she was just a little bug-looking thing, almost like a little ship. She could fly and use electricity as a weapon. Eva now, as you may or frankly may not recognize her, has taken on a more human form. That happened when her host, Phantom X, died the first time. She mutated into the form of a human woman with silvery skin. Since Phantom X was her host at first, she always maintained a connection to him and was actually his lover. Eva's powers include electric charges, flight, she can change her size and body type, she can create powerful illusions. Additionally powerful, with Phantom X's help, she can regenerate pieces of her body should she lose them, and she is capable of being a weapon as herself. Phantom X is able to throw pieces of her that act like stun darts. Eva has about 70 appearances in total, with her last one around 2019. Now moving on to her host, Phantom X. I will admit he's been around more, around 150 appearances, which might sound like a lot, but the main X-Men in comparison have appearance counts in the thousands, so 150 is nothing. You're probably wondering how a man could grow Eva in him, manifest his nervous system into a girlfriend. Well, he was created not exactly 100% human, more like a human cyborg. He was part of the Weapon Plus project, and he actually goes by many names: Mutant Man of Mystery, Charlie Cluster 7, and Le Phantom X. See, Phantom X likes to use a French accent, a bad one, allegedly, because he knows it annoys people. There might also be additional reasons for it if you choose to believe him. According to Phantom X, he grew up in a virtual France and it wasn't perfect, so that's why he loves the French but is not a perfect Frenchman. Phantom X's powers include Eva, a healing factor, super intelligence, super strength, he is scent free, so very hard to track, and literally believes he is the best. He can't see anything is better than him or he will have a mental breakdown, I am not kidding. This extreme X-Men is catching waves but not a break. Slipstream, or Davis Cameron, was just your average Australian guy surfing, vibing, live, laugh, loving, but soon he would not be doing any of those things except living. He is alive, a win is a win. Slipstream, because he is a surfer, used a hoverboard as his means of transportation. His mutant ability was the ability to form quantum portals, also known as warp wave. The portals were used for transport over large or small or just any distance on Earth, and they could be used by anyone. Slipstream went a while not knowing he was a mutant. It wasn't until the X-Men showed up and told him and his sister Heather that the two were the children of a crime lord, and then Heather later revealed she was a mutant, so of course Slipstream had to get his powers activated by Sage. He helped the X-Men fight against alien invaders but was hurt pretty bad. When he left the hospital, he disappeared for a while but then showed up to fight off some people attacking Krakoa, so eventually he ended up there. Honestly, some of these mutants haven't exactly disappeared, they just don't get storylines after theirs is over, and they're usually only remembered by Marvel when they need extra mutants to fill out a scene, you know? Like, oh, Slipstream was in this battle, cool, great, but like, how is he doing? Mentally, how is he? Anyway, Slipstream has about 19 appearances total. Sister to Slipstream and Golden Girl, literally, Heather Cameron is Lifeguard. The Golden Australian Princess, she is all of those things, we'll get to the Golden Princess in a second, found out she was a mutant before her brother did. She, with Storm and Thunderbird, defeated some attackers, and that's when she discovered the mutant powers. And it's a really useful one too. She can clock what the present danger is to her or those around her, and her body will modify itself automatically to give her the right powers to save the day. So her power is like really fast adaptation. Some powers she has gained while confronted with danger include golden skin, told you we'd get there, extra arms, gills, wings, a fishtail to live her H2O just add water dreams, and extra strength. So we've acknowledged the golden skin part, let's cover the princess thing. Lifeguard was on a mission to infiltrate a spaceship that belonged to an alien race. While doing that, Heather's appearance changed to the appearance of the alien race and her DNA switched around, and people think she may have been of royal alien descent based on the markings on her. Her brother couldn't handle the alien look, unfortunately, that his sister was sporting, and he disappeared, so she was looking for him for a long time. Eventually both siblings ended up on Krakoa. Lifeguard's name comes not only from her lifeguarding mutant powers, but also from the fact that she was a lifeguard back when she didn't know she was a mutant. In total, she also has about 19 appearances. Ariel the alien is an icon and a fashion icon, bring her back. Her original design was this epic epic 80s fit, just lots of colors, and even in her redesign she's still full of color. She hails from this place called Coconut Grove, and it looks like your average nightclub. All the aliens there are capable of teleportation using doors. If there are no doors, too bad. Ariel is special and different though. She is a mutant in her world. She has the additional power, a power passed down through her family, of super persuasion. She is described as she who speaks like water running across the stones. Ariel can make people do or think almost anything she wants using her charming, persuasive voice. Ariel ended up in San Francisco at one point and then joined the X-Men and stayed affiliated with the team since. In total, Ariel has about 18 appearances. I feel like Coconut Grove is a vibe and sounds like a Mario Kart track, but if I could, I would transport myself there. Let me know in the comments where you would choose to transport yourself. Changeling is a forgotten man despite his major contributions to the Marvel Universe. The biggest thing he did for Marvel was die as Professor X, so even his big moments weren't fully him. Changeling is a shapeshifter. He has become many people, but two really stick out. One was Elvis in the middle of a car chase, and the other was Professor X. Changeling wasn't always an upstanding citizen. He was a bit of a menace at first, but a cancer diagnosis and a few months left to live changed the Changeling's whole perspective. He now wanted to do better in his last few months, so he went to Professor X. Professor X gave him quite the chance. Pretend to be him while he goes underground to prepare for an alien invasion. This worked for a while, and it had its perks for Changeling too. Before becoming the Professor, Changeling had telepathic abilities, but they were limited. When he did become the Professor, he needed more power in that department in order to fool everyone, so Professor X gave him a major power boost. As Professor X, Changeling passed during a battle with Grotesque. He was brought back to life for a brief stint for a She-Hulk storyline, that's when the Elvis thing happened, but in the end died again. Another version of this character does exist out there, and he does kind of eclipse this version. He was revamped, he got powers and better storylines, and a new name, Morph. But at his core, he is a shapeshifter, and the OG version had about 17 appearances total. Most duos that we've seen on this list are equally as known as the other. Not here though. You might have heard of the X-Men Sunfire. Well, he has a sister, also an X-Men. She's named Sunfire, and she has way less panel time with only about 7 appearances in comparison to her brother's 247. A reason for this could be that Sunfire didn't know she had mutant abilities for a long time. We actually didn't see her discover them, but we do know it took a while for them to appear. Her powers, shockingly, have to do with the sun. She can absorb solar radiation and coat her body in fire. She can generate powerful blasts of energy known as plasma blasts. She can fly, she can create a very hot force field around herself that can melt incoming bullets, and she can sense heat signatures. She was part of the X-Men team for a brief moment, helping them retrieve Professor X from Magneto, but after that mission, she was done, she was gone. A very cool character that has a suspiciously low appearance count. I guess for Marvel, she's too hot to handle. Time-controlling mutants are common, but each one still deserves the time of day, including Sway. So Sway controls time, but you probably got that from my first sentence. Her time-controlling capabilities are for stopping time and making time replay. So it's not like going back in time, but instead she can go back to a spot and see like a phantom of what happened there, replay the events. What's cool about that is that other people can see the phantom images too. Her stopping time originally meant that everything stopped, but with training, she was able to stop select objects and everything else would be fine. Sway was originally Suzanne Chan, and her backstory is tragic. When is an X-Men backstory not, right? Her mutant ability manifested while out with her parents. Her family was caught in the crossfire of some bad people. Sway unconsciously stopped the bullet aimed at her, but because she didn't know she could do that, she couldn't save her parents. She was in and out of places that could not help her, but then found the X-Men. Well, the X-Men found her, kind of. Professor X needed to save the X-Men from Krakoa because it's not a safe space for mutants at that moment. He took her and 3 others and created a little team to get the original X-Men back. The island is where Sway met her demise, and now she's only appeared in minor appearances and is generally not the first mutant people think of when you ask, with only about 5 appearances in total. Sway, of course, made some friends while on that little X-Men team, and one was Petra, meaning rock in Greek. Petra handled all things Earth, so geokinesis. She rocks, literally. She can manipulate rock into different shapes, even Sword's Minecraft queen in real life. She can also cause earthquakes and create holes in the earth, not like the center of the earth kinda deep, always. Sometimes it's just a little one is enough to incapacitate someone. She can also change the state of a piece of earth, like creating diamonds from coal or making glass from sand. Again, she is a Minecraft character in real life. Dust clouds, telekinetically flying on rocks, and consistency manipulation are also in her power set. The consistency consistency thing is making the earth like wiggly or soft or smooth or all the opposite of those. Like Sway, Petra has a traumatic backstory. She accidentally caused her entire family to experience the fatal effects of a rock slide, and then she became an orphan and was placed in a foster home. Her foster father acted inappropriately towards her, but she trapped him in the ground, good for her. She went on the run, hiding in caves, a run-in with the police, and some training with Moira McTaggart later, and our girl was on the reserve X-Men team with Sway. She also met her end on the mutant island. Like Sway, Petra is also not at the forefront of most fans' mind with only 5-ish appearances, but that doesn't mean she didn't rock. I've heard this guy described as paste for plot holes. Apparently, he's been around since the beginning, helping out with major X-Men missions, but his horrible mutant ability means literally no one knows because they all forgot. We all forgot Forget-Me-Not. Forget-Me-Not literally is a mutant with the power of being forgotten. Even machines forget he's there. He was trapped once by a machine, but then it forgot he was there and he was able to escape. Though he is forgotten, he still exists. Obviously, if he drinks some orange juice, people can see the orange juice is gone, they just won't remember who did it. After missions with him, the other X-Men would be left with gaps in their memory. Eventually, Psylocke was able to put a part of the puzzle together. What's really tragic about Forget-Me-Not is he literally sacrificed himself to save Krakoa from Nimrod, and no one remembers. In total, Forget-Me-Not has about 14 appearances, and I just totally forgot who we were talking about. I'm kidding. Forget-Me-Not, I will not forget you.
Number 10. Savage Dragon. The Savage Dragon is one of Image Comics' most popular and long-lasting characters, and he has been around since his debut as just Dragon in Graphic Fantasy number 1 in June of 1982. Basically, the Savage Dragon woke up butt naked and with no memory in a burning field. He was a giant green, quote, man with a big fin on the top of his head and super ripped, like pretty much all heroes are. Now, what we didn't know at the time was that he was actually an alien conqueror named Kerr, who originally came to Earth to conquer it, but was betrayed by 2 scientists. He was an enhanced member of the alien race called the Krillin, and his enhanced Krillin physiology gave him superhuman strength, agility, and stamina, healing abilities, and telepathic resistances. Now, one of my favorite parts about this hero is that instead of joining a superhero team and being a typical hero, the Dragon actually wound up being a member of the Chicago Police Department and helped them with their, quote, super freak problem. I think it's cool to kind of ground the character like that, and I think it would make a great movie. I don't know. Number 9. Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, which actually happened to be a ruse by the totems of the Parliament of Limbs, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he has been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into the abilities of birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, he's gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. The character of Animal Man explores profound philosophical themes, including environmentalism, animal rights, and the interconnectedness of all living beings. His stories, particularly Grant Morrison's run on the character, were actually surprisingly really dark. I don't know if that could really be adapted to be a normal, old superhero movie for a family-friendly DCU, but it could make an interesting standalone film maybe. All I know is the character deserves more recognition, and a movie would do that. Number 8. Captain Britain. There is actually a whole Captain Britain core made up of all versions of Captain Britain from across the Omniverse, but for this point, we are specifically going to cover Earth 616's protector, Dr. Brian Braddock. Brian Braddock brings a distinctive blend of British charm, valor, and honor, presenting a fresh and unique superhero persona. His origin story, involving the mystical Amulet of Right and the wizard or entity of Merlin and the parallel dimension of Otherworld, kind of gives us a fresh and fantastical backdrop, allowing for pretty good visuals and epic battles if it were adapted to the screen. Captain Britain's powers, granted by the Amulet of Right, grant him superhuman strength, agility, and the ability to fly, which is nothing really new, but that's not not really what would draw people in anyways. The character of Brian Braddock is complex and relatable, grappling with the responsibilities of wielding immense power while maintaining his own sense of identity. A Captain Britain movie would not only showcase his crazy adventures, but also delve into themes of duty, identity, and personal growth, and then, due to the multiversal nature of his conflicts, it would slot really well into the MCU and would make for a fun watch just in general. Number 7. Sunfire. Shiro Yoshida, otherwise known as Sunfire, is the premier superhero of Japan in Marvel Comics. He is also an alpha-level mutant who possesses the power to manipulate solar radiation. This power allows Sunfire to fly, produce plasma blasts, plasma shields, and generate plasma temperatures of around 1 million degrees Fahrenheit. His powers are pretty similar to those of Johnny Storm, interestingly enough, but Shiro Yoshida is fiercely patriotic, usually choosing to fight for his country over most other teams, and while historically he has normally been a villain, he has been a part of the X-Men and does ultimately do what's best for whoever he is representing. The character's origin and early days had a lot to do with disdain for America specifically, which is kind of fair considering his mother was a survivor of Hiroshima. Shiro is an awesome character who just doesn't get enough time in the light in my opinion, and also having a Japanese hero would help open up a bit more representation in the MCU, which is always welcome. Number 6. Hawkgirl. A movie centered around DC Comics' Hawkgirl might seem like a weird choice, but I think it would be an excellent addition to the superhero film genre for several reasons. First and foremost, Hawkgirl brings a unique and captivating mythology, drawing from an ancient Egyptian lore and reincarnation themes. Her backstory as a former Egyptian princess and a warrior who reincarnates throughout time adds a lot of depth and complexity to the character, making her a fascinating protagonist to explore. Hawkgirl possesses an array of incredible abilities though as well, including enhanced strength, flight, obviously, and mastery of advanced weaponry. These powers, combined with her warrior spirit and strong leadership qualities, make her a pretty powerful and inspiring figure. Now of course this is all similar to Hawkman and he has most of these abilities as well, but Hawkgirl is just cooler, I'm sorry. A Hawkgirl movie would offer the opportunity to delve into complex interpersonal dynamics, particularly her relationship with Hawkman, an eternal love across lifetimes which would provide a compelling emotional anchor for the film. Lastly, as a member of the Justice League, Hawkgirl's inclusion would also open up the door to expanding the DC Extended Universe. A Hawkgirl or maybe even a Hawkgirl and Hawkman movie would just be super cool. I think we can all agree. Number 5. Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment sitting at ground zero of a nuclear explosion encased in an alien metal. Now the explosion didn't kill him. What it did do was bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers and throwing him 20 or so years forward into the present day. The alien metal gave him incredible abilities such as flight, matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, time travel, magic, and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field. These powers have let him perform some insane feats like creating a universe within the quantum field and later destroying that universe, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself, and before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. Now, I think a lot of that is a bit massive for a single superhero film, but I find this character extremely interesting, and I think maybe a space-focused movie about this character would do pretty well if it was handled with a bit more of a serious tone, and I could see it having some mind-blowing visuals. Number 4. Sentry. Robert Reynolds was an addict and a broken man who was granted the power of 1 million exploding suns after illegally partaking in the Golden Sentry Serum, which was an offshoot of the original Super Soldier Serum, except like 100,000 times more powerful. He has photokinetic-based powers fueled by the sun itself that include molecular manipulation, immortality, insane super strength, speed, invulnerability, stamina, agility, reflexes, and senses, flight, teleportation, energy absorption and blast, psionic abilities, and more. Now he used this power for the greater good of all and put together a costume to make his debut as the Sentry. He was the example of what a hero should be. He had connections to Iron Man, was active during the years just prior to the Fantastic Four's emergence. He became a role model for Spider-Man, as well as an ally to the X-Men, an equal to Reed Richards, and a friend to the Hulk. He is one of the world's greatest superheroes, until the Void arrived. The Void nearly took out Sentry's sidekick Scout, it drove the Hulk into a rampage, and took the lives of over 1 million people in Manhattan. When Reynolds realized that the Void was his own dark persona, he enlisted Doctor Strange and Reed Richards, and together they wiped the memory of Sentry from everyone in the world, including themselves. That origin story in the comics, plus his awesome internal struggle with his dark persona, would honestly make for a pretty awesome superhero movie. I'm just saying. Number 3, Wildcats. Wildcats centered around the centuries-long war between aliens called Cherubim and Daemonites. Cherubims, a nearly immortal human-looking alien race with exceptional powers and skills, traveled to Earth and by breeding with humans, populated the planet with half-breeds. Daemonites, on the other hand, besides being incredibly scary to look at, also possess various superhuman abilities, including body possession and mental control over human beings. Now, this movie wouldn't really be a single superhero-focused film. It would be more of an ensemble thing, which hasn't had the best track record in film format. Movies like the first Suicide Squad did not go over well and were hurt by an ensemble. Eternals also hurt from having an ensemble, but I thought it was kind of okay. The second Suicide Squad movie worked out pretty alright though, and I think if handled correctly, the Wildcats could make for a pretty good film and boost up the team for unfamiliar readers in a similar way to something like Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 2, Jack of Hearts. Jack Hart was the son of a brilliant scientist. A scientist that created the ridiculously efficient liquid sci-fi fuel called Zero Fluid. In his tragic comic book backstory, Jack was exposed to this fluid and it gave him his awesome but difficult to control abilities. Importantly, he was also part alien, with his mother hailing from the Contraxian race, so that's a whole other thing to this as well. Now, due to the cellular mutation that took place after his Zero Fluid exposure, Jonathan Hart is now able to produce pink concussive energy beams and blasts from his hands and body, taking up the incredibly clever name of Jack of Hearts, apparently in honor of his father's love of card games and not because that's his name, basically. Jack of Hearts can use his Zero Energy Blast to fly at speeds currently not specifically known, but he has flown halfway across the United States in 3 minutes flat, so it's pretty fast. His biological structure was reformatted to basically give him the superhuman starter pack of abilities, but his strength has been able to lift 25 tons. He has enhanced speed, stamina, healing factor, and durability, able to withstand some pretty heavy hits and survive in the vacuum of space. But in addition, thanks to a quote symbiote energy sump device, Jack went through another mutation which gave him the ability to think as fast as a computer can, and he can retain and retrieve stored information from the deep recesses of his brain, which is pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Given the nature of his stories and the way the MCU is opening up to space and the multiverse, I think it would be doable to introduce this character, although he has been difficult to write stories for in the past, so I think it would need some reworking. And finally, in at number 1, it's the Silver Surfer. Now, I know the character has been featured in the second Fantastic Four movie back in the day, and he was cool and all, but his story specifically focused on Norrin Radd and Galactus properly? Come on. As a herald of Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds, the Silver Surfer's journey from being an unwilling servant to a cosmic hero, saving entire worlds from destruction, is filled with existential themes and moral dilemmas. The movie could explore the character's profound introspection and inner conflict as he grapples with the weight of his past and the choices he must make to protect his universe. The cosmic scope of Silver Surfer's adventures would allow for awesome space exploration, celestial battles, and mind-bending visuals. Plus, his encounters with other heroes like the Fantastic Four, Thor, and Nova could make exciting crossover potential within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A Silver Surfer movie would not only offer thrilling action and epic cosmic conflicts, but also delve into deep philosophical themes and open up the cosmic side of the MCU just a touch more. Kicking off the list at number 10 today is Dead Man. Boston Brand was the only son of Gary and Barbara Brand, and his parents were very much not great. When his parents didn't fight each other, they took out their anger on Boston. Because of that, when he was 16 years old, he lashed out against his parents and ran away from home. As you do when you are a fictional character who runs away from home, Boston joined the circus and eventually became an elite gymnast and trapeze performer. While that was great for him, he could not leave his past behind and frequently sought out some form of peace in the bottle, and would often often become physical with people. Everything for Boston changed though when during one show an assassin from the League of Assassins named Hook took his life during his trapeze performance. When he passed away, Boston was placed in between life and death by the Hindu goddess of balance, Ramakrishna. She told him that he needed to atone for his past transgressions and egocentrism. As punishment, he was to return to the world as a ghost, invisible to most of the world, and he was to better the lives of others using his ghostly abilities, namely the ability to possess others. Now, I don't know about you, but I could see that being easily adapted into a pretty compelling movie. If you've ever seen the Ricky Gervais movie Ghost Town, just take that and superfy it. Number 9. Hellcat. During her formative years, Patsy Walker's fame-obsessed mother, Dorothy, would use her daughter as a way to make a buck, usually while also living vicariously through her daughter, and constantly disapproving of her tomboy nature. Dorothy would pressure her daughter into modeling, and when that didn't work out, due to Patsy's own lack of interest and commitment, Dorothy started a comic book containing fictionalized romantic adventures of her daughter as a teenager, which is super weird. Despite being super creepy, this did give Patsy Walker some notoriety in the Marvel Universe before she finally joined up with the heroes she idolized, the Avengers. And that story itself is kind of funny. Because, basically, using tactics learned from her mother, Patsy blackmailed the mutant Hank McCoy, aka Beast, into helping her transform into a superhero. Patsy tracked down Beast while he was an Avenger and forced him to allow her to accompany them on a mission. During the Avengers ride-along, Patsy found an old costume that once belonged to Greer Nelson, aka Tigra, who could also get her own movie, just saying, but during her early days as the Cat. Now Patsy took the gear for herself and assumed the identity Hellcat. Thanks to the suit, her natural ability plus experience over time with training from Moondragon and her husband Damon Hellstrom, Hellcat has become a force to be reckoned with in Marvel Comics. I think her origin story is pretty damn unique, and I think with a little tweaking it can make for an impactful and pretty awesome movie. Number 8. The Question. Vic Sage, aka The Question, is one of the greatest detectives of the DC Universe. Yes, even ranking upside along Batman. Despite having no superpowers, his analytical abilities, finding clues which are overlooked by most people, plus his skill as a fearsome interrogator and martial artist, somewhat on par with Batman, and his faceless mask made of an experimental material called pseudoderm that enables him to change disguises easily, plus his somewhat eccentric personality, make him an incredibly interesting and kinda somewhat creepy protagonist. An old school detective noir movie can easily make him a fan favorite. For any of you who have seen Zack Snyder's Watchmen or who have read the DC comic of the same name, the character of Rorschach was based off of The Question, so we already know that a character like this can work on film. It's just a matter of creating a story that the character can support all on his own. I also think that even a story about his protege, Renee Montoya, would also potentially be even better. Number 7. Zatanna. A lot of people sleep on Zatanna, and that is a mistake. Zatanna is part of the Homo Magi race, giving her a genetic talent for magic that makes her one of the greatest magic users in the DC universe. Zatanna was born with magic, but she's not limited by that. With the addition of learned magics, Zatanna can cast a whole multitude of spells that allow her to do things like travel dimensions, summon objects and beings, perform telekinesis and advanced telepathy, redirect and return attacks, mess with the weather or even time of day, manipulate her own size, transform into basically anything, become intangible, and manipulate magical versions of the elements. But that's all the basic stuff. She can cast spells that can manipulate reality, alter the molecular structure of objects, and move forward, backwards, and freeze time itself. And that's not even getting into what she can do with black magic. She has the potential to make child's play out of most of the people in the Justice League despite that fact. But Zatanna's backstory of becoming a successful stage illusionist before discovering her true magical powers and her half Homo Magi parentage while investigating the disappearance of her father? You can't tell me that wouldn't make for a great movie. Number 6. Martian Manhunter. John Johns, or John Jones on Earth, is another character that people really sleep on. But this guy is insane with his level of ability. John is the last of his race of Martians, and he is extremely powerful and should never never be slept on. He speaks with the resolve and intelligence of someone who's been around for a very hot minute, and that's because he has been. According to DC Comics, he is in the ballpark of around or over 220 million years old. John arrived on Earth after he was pulled here through space and time by a teleportation beam during an experiment conducted by a Dr. Saul Erdel, who passed away from the shock of actually finding a Martian shortly afterwards, which actually kind of makes sense. But way before that, John's race, the Martians, were practically wiped out a long time ago, leaving him completely alone and isolated. But now, pulled forward in time and finally on Earth with no one to tell him what the heck was going on, he eventually used his shapeshifting abilities to become a detective, operating in Middletown, America. He mainly operated from the safety of his human persona before he eventually exposed himself to the world and became a founding member of the Justice League, and also one of its most powerful members, being even stronger and more capable than Superman with an even more impressive list of abilities. And that makes him a good candidate for a movie, just saying. Number 5, Mr. Miracle. This one would be a bit of a different movie, and I think it would work well as a duo with the character of Orion. Basically, Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle, is the son of DC's Highfather, who is essentially the opposite to the villain Darkseid. As part of a truce with Darkseid, Scott was traded with Darkseid's son, Orion. While Orion got to live a pretty good life with Highfather and become a hero, Scott was treated incredibly badly living on Apokolips as basically a prisoner of Darkseid. But despite the hellish conditions on Apokolips, Scott was able to retain his inherent goodness, and using his skill as a master escape artist, and despite the fact that he is a pacifist, he escaped from Darkseid's clutches. Telling that story in a movie format would be awesome, and then it could lead into more stories with the rest of DC's roster of cinematic heroes. I personally think his story is incredibly interesting and unique. Number 4, Darkhawk. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney, and when he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, he happened to stumble upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. This ancient Shi'ar magical armor is very cool, and it gave Chris quite the set of abilities. Obviously, the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes are all here in excess, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse, whatever that means, and basically had untapped potential. As time went on and he eventually gained the ability to go to space, he learned of the Shi'ar origins of his suit and of the fraternity of Raptors, that are basically like Marvel's over-the-top, super cool space cops. Almost like Green Lanterns, but cooler and less utilized. I'm just imagining how Darkhawk could fit into the MCU's ever-expanding roster and stories, and I think it would be a missed opportunity to not include the character. Number 3, Starbrand. Starbrand isn't so much a singular person as it is a power in and of itself. Right now, the current Starbrand in the 616 universe is Brandy Selby, the daughter of Suzanne Selby, who became the Starbrand after the one before her, Kevi Connor, passed away. The Avengers stepped in and had to help Suzanne deliver little Brandy, an act that caused Suzanne to pass away, sadly, and attach the Starbrand to Brandy. Since Brandy's birth, she's used the Starbrand to fly and survive without oxygen and in the vacuum of space, and she can use extremely powerful energy blasts that can take down multiple people at once. But the Starbrand itself is an incredible source of power, proven by other people who have wielded it. The bearer of Earth 723's Starbrand used the power to create music that can influence human behavior, to the extent that he has unified the people of his world as a single hive mind. Earth 541 is the home of a Starbrand bearer who has conquered his world and installed himself as the head of a benevolent monarchical dictatorship, but like a good one that actually somehow works despite the lack of freedom. The Starbrand power takes on many different forms, but doesn't seem to be bound by physics, and supplies the bearer infinite power limited only by their imagination. While that kind of power sort of breaks a lot of things in the MCU, the amount of Starbrand bearers going back millions of years gives a plethora of character stories to pick from, and I mean, let's be honest, someone being granted an ancient incredible power is a classic basis for a superhero movie. Number 2, Nightwing. Now, Nightwing is in no way a forgotten hero, not even a little bit. But explain to me how we have had around 11 Batman live action movies, and I don't think Nightwing has appeared as Nightwing in a single one. Well, now I don't want him just featured, I want a full-on Nightwing movie in Bloodhaven with little to no Batman. Of all the members of the Bat family, Dick Grayson was not only the very first, but for a lot of people, including me, he is the favorite. Born to a family of acrobats, orphaned and then taken in by Bruce Wayne, Dick became the very first Robin, appearing in Detective Comics number 38 in 1940, created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and illustrated by Jerry Robinson. As you can imagine, he has a long history, and as such, a large amount of experience and proficiency. He was the leader of the Teen Titans for a while, and when his Robin career came to an end, he became Nightwing to honor another hero by the same name from Krypton, Superman's home planet. He has gone on to take the Batman mantle a couple of times, but honestly, it was in 1995 and 1996 when he received his own stories that he really became his own. To set Nightwing apart from Batman, he was given his own city, the decaying harbor town known as Bloodhaven, which was just north of Gotham. It allowed him to be close enough to Gotham to stay part of the Batman family, as well as have his own city and series of adventures, and honestly, some of them are even darker and somewhat better and more compelling than some of Batman's own stories. And finally, in at number 1, Blue Marvel. A former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brashear is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters and one of my absolute underutilized favorites. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor. Luckily, this also gave him superpowers, which he used to become the masked hero known as the Blue Marvel. Unfortunately though, Connor became unstable both physically and mentally and became the incredibly powerful villain Anti-Man. During one of their biggest and climactic fights, the Blue Marvel's mask was torn, revealing to the world that he was African American. Due to the socio-political climate of America in the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy asked Blue Marvel to take an early retirement to ease racial tensions. It wasn't until decades later in the modern age that Adam would once again step up as the Blue Marvel, one of the most interesting and powerful heroes the world has, yet one that often feels really underappreciated. A movie for this character would give him the fame that he rightly deserves.
The superiority complex this man has is almost laughable. The Gentleman is his name, but he is literally anything but. His real name is Gustav, and he is the type that is considered a threat even in the underground. He also, and this is where the superiority complex comes in, he believes that he is part of a superior group and that most people in the world are simply wastes of space, and the only thing they provide to society is being cannon fodder. He is a villain, I'll give him that. His absolutely wild connection to Peter Parker, he was almost the guy that killed Peter's parents. He was trying to get Logan, but Peter's parents stepped in. In retaliation, the Gentleman alerted another bad guy about the Parkers, and then that guy ended up being responsible for the parents. The Gentleman did request for Peter's life to be spared so Peter could be a later challenge. It's messed up. He did learn about the accident that made Peter Spider-Man and even kind of protected the kid by ending anyone who knew Peter's identity. So he did good things in really twisted ways and bad things in twisted ways. If he does something, it's probably twisted. For all his superior thinking, he was just a regular human, no superpowers. His only power was financial power as he was rich. He did have a bodyguard named Pity with the ability to create darkness. This villain has 5 known appearances in the comics, but a what would have been a major role in the Amazing Spider-Man films. I love those movies, and the cliffhanger they were left on, I think about it once a week and get upset. The Gentleman appeared in the mid-credits scene in the first movie, and after the big fight in the second movie, he's presumably the one hinting at forming the Sinister Six in that franchise. I'm so mad we never got to see it. Fog literally slipped through our fingers. He does have a power. He can turn his body into green fog on command. He can make his body dense to an extent as well, like a ghost that can touch things and choke things. The villain is described as a slippery ghost of mist. He uses his powers powers to assist him in his line of work, that being a contract slayer. He actually started out as just a regular human that had a not so regular line of work, but when he was set to end a physicist, an explosion in the lab gave him his powers. He didn't work alone though, his partner in crime literally was Night, but we will talk about him next. The duo was hired by Kingpin to take down the Arranger, and they did, and that's what brought Spider-Man into the mix. Spidey chased the criminals down and defeated them by knocking them out. That all happened in the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 165 to 167 in 1990. No one knew where they went for the longest time after this until 2004's Marvel Knights Spider-Man. They had a very small cameo in the scene where Venom is being introduced. After that, again, where are they? Moving on to the other half of the destructive duo, Knight, spelled like a medieval knight because that is what he was. The power he got from the lab explosion was the ability to turn himself into a knight, the medieval man of armor. The knight form is a very strong suit. It can resist most forms of harm, except for lots of electricity. That's what Spidey used to knock them out in that previously mentioned comic. Also, just so you know, the characters' real last names are Fog and Knight. This was always in the cards for them. In the comics, it's theorized that the characters turned into their last names because that was how they saw themselves. So one thing about Peter's story is that he's bullied. He gets bullied in high school, right? We all know that. What if I told you there was someone who got bullied even more? Not to make this the Pain Olympics, but Peter is losing to Charles Wiederman, later Molten Man. He became Molten Man when he attempted to create a vibranium skin suit that would protect soldiers from any impact. The guy cut corners though, which led to the vibranium in the lab to blow up and attach itself to Charles. Now Charles was coated in vibranium and has all the powers that vibranium does. Unfortunately, the suit and the lab had a bunch of chemicals in them, and Charles's mental stability is soon holding on by a thread. He goes around on a slaying spree to find former classmates that bullied him. He took out a few people and burned down Peter's apartment. He's nothing if not thorough. Eventually, Peter realized that vibranium, Molten Man himself, can be hardened under extreme pressure, so Peter trapped Molten Man in a pressurized chamber which caused Molten Man's body to harden and prevent him from moving. The good news is Charles volunteered to get tested on for a cure to metals wearing people. Happens more often than you think in Marvel, and he was cured, lived happily ever after. Big Wheel is the villain, and he drives a, you guessed it, big wheel. His last name is also Wheel, so we should have seen this coming. Jackson Wheel was a villain even in his everyday job. He was a businessman, specifically a corrupt one that embezzled money. He hired this other villain called Rocket Racer to steal the evidence of his crimes, but Racer withheld the documents and asked for more money. He told Wheel that his jet-powered skateboard was going to keep at Wheel's case until he paid him. Wheel decided to hire the Tinkerer to create a weapon for him to fight the skateboard. That weapon was the Big Wheel, a large monowheel equipped with armor and various weapons. The Big Wheel and Spider-Man fought for the first time when Spider-Man was fighting Racer, actually. Wheel was after Racer and chased him through traffic, flattening cars on the way. The Racer led Big Wheel to the water, and just before Racer was going to get crushed and pulled in, he was pulled out by Spider-Man and the wheel fell into the Hudson River. He survived and would go on to cause chaos for various other heroes, including Spider-Woman. In total, Big Wheel has just under 20 appearances. The name Draco, when I say that, you probably think of the blonde from the Harry Potter series, but that name also belongs to an interesting Spider-Man villain. Q Drake was a scientist, winning a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in the field of biology. The man would turn out to be anything but peaceful though, and honestly was just the lizard in a different font. Drake's research project was combining iguana genes with humans, tested it out on himself, and became Draco the Dragon. He walked like a man but had the fire of a dragon as well as poisonous gas. He was huge and had these massive wings when there was this meteor shower, and that's when Draco first appeared, so it looked like he had flown down into space, also a play on the Draco constellation there. To top it off, he made such a grand entrance he declared he wanted to rule the Earth. Classic move. Spider-Man and Draco ended up fighting at the top of the Empire State Building, and when Draco fell off, he transformed into a little iguana and disappeared into a wall. That's it. This story was part of this thing Marvel Comics did in the 1970s, where they released a story on record instead of on the page, so it's no wonder he slipped away and we haven't seen him again. This guy makes me so sad. He was a villain at first, but he didn't want to be. Mindworm was born with his powers. They weren't good powers, so he was set up from the start. He had the ability to drain mental energy from people around him. His other powers were mental based too, like telepathy and mind wave blasts and illusions. He was also known to invade dreams, be a natural genius, and when he drains energy, he could do that to the point of death, but he didn't want to do that. Though he wasn't strong physically that much, he could absorb so much energy and make himself very strong, even strong enough to fight Spider-Man. The character has less than 10 appearances and has lived quite the heartbreaking life in those 10 appearances. When he was born, he didn't know how to control his powers. He was literally a baby, so he accidentally made himself an orphan. In the orphanage, people started calling him Mindworm. He aged out and moved to a neighborhood in New York where he could harmlessly feed off the residents. He was found by Spider-Man and the two fought each other. Spidey won, they fought again, and Spider-Man won again, but double won this time because Mindworm realized that he wanted to be a good guy. Unfortunately, Mindworm was taken advantage of by some goons and went to jail. He couldn't hold down a job after jail and became homeless and was eventually beaten on the street and passed before Spider-Man could help. It was really sad. R.I.P. Mindworm. Pstar, or Thomas Duffy, has had about 2 appearances, which means there really isn't much to tell here. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man 409 in 1996 and then died that same year in Spider-Man Unlimited 14. What did he do in that short time? Well, he was a player in the Great Game. Pstar, Rhino, and Joystick teamed up together to fight the friendly neighborhood web-slinger. Pstar wore a suit that generates a magnetic field, allowing the villain to attract and repel whatever he wants to fight with. It's also resistant to Peter's webbing. Of course, even 3 against 1, Spider-Man came out on top and Pstar went to jail. Eventually he got out but was shot in a different battle and perished. This fashion icon should be in the pages of Vogue, not forgotten. Belladonna, also known as Madame Belladonna to distinguish from another character with the same name, was an American in Europe. She opened a fashion design business with her sister and all was well, slaying the game, until this man came along and ruined everything. Roderick Kingsley, hashtag not my Roderick, came along and stole the sisters' designs and took them to America to sell. Also, Kingsley later became the Hobgoblin, so he sucks literally across the board. Madame Belladonna was rightfully very angry about her stuff being stolen and put together a team of henchmen to track the Goblin down. The team found him and attacked, but Spider-Man swooped in to save the guy because he was just a defenseless human at this time after all. There were a series of fights until finally Belladonna and her henchmen were webbed up by the spider and left for the authorities. Belladonna only appears in 3 issues: Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man 43, 47, and 48. And we don't know where she is, if she's designing prison jumpsuits, I don't know. Other characters are now named Belladonna and have no correlation to her. Of what's been shown, Belladonna has no superpowers, but she is very good at chemistry and of course design. She has a gas gun that can render someone unconscious. She will also put this gas in perfume bottles for a more high fashion look. The gas and her name come from the Belladonna plant. Sticks and Stones are the villains here. They had very different origins but are both super cool. So Sticks was originally homeless and not doing well, so when Stone's team of scientists showed up looking for homeless people to experiment on, Sticks was all for it since it paid well. It gave him way more than he bargained for though. His trial resulted in him becoming a living cancer. Anything he touched would rot away. Stone has powers like that too, plus his genius scientific mind, and he has a bunch of weapons. The difference between Sticks and Stones is that Sticks rots organic matter and Stone rots inorganic matter, so together they are the worst. To make everything even more unsettling, Sticks can make his fingers longer, all the more easy to grab things to rot. The pair debuted in Amazing Spider-Man 309. They have fought not just Spider-Man, but also Deadpool. Deadpool is the choice to fight these guys, I think. The pair have about 10 appearances.
Number 10. Microwave Man. Also known as Louis Paget, we meet this villain in Action Comics number 487 in 1978. A space traveler, he returned to Earth after 40 years of flying through the stars aboard an alien spacecraft. Before he began his journey, he was already the costumed villain Microwave Man. Upon returning to Earth, he calls on his alien friends to grant him his youth back, but it comes at a cost. His life will be shortened to just a few hours. He says, yeah, I'm good with that. He just wants the opportunity to defeat Superman. So Superman agrees and even allows Microwave Man to defeat him in a test of strength. Louis dies satisfied and the aliens claim his body and they set him adrift in space. It's a touching story in which the villain is dispatched within 2 issues, meaning we will probably never see him again. It's nice though. Hey gang, before we hit number 9, I really need you guys to hit that like button. It's not required, I will continue with the list either way, but we do appreciate it. Number 9, Sand Superman. First appearing in Superman 233 in 1971, Sand Superman is exactly what he sounds like. Created from a portal between Earth and the Quorum dimension, Sand Superman just wants to drain Superman of all his power and knowledge. However, as it gains energy, he also gains the desire to act like Superman, including serving unselfishly as a superhero. Unfortunately, Superman can't really take him on as a sidekick or anything like that for 2 reasons. 1, Sand Superman only gains power by taking it away from Superman. And 2, if they were to actually touch each other ever, Sand Superman's alternatively charged atoms would just result in a huge explosion big enough to destroy the entire planet. Sand Superman's story was really not all that lengthy, so it's pretty easy to see why he hasn't returned. Coming in at number 8, J. Wilbur Wolfingham. He would call himself a business consultant or philanthropist, but make no mistake, he is a con man. Mr. Wolfingham first appeared in Superman 341 and was erased from existence following the collapse of the multiverse during the Crisis on Infinite Earth series. In his debut, he has a scheme to sell amulets which allegedly teleport the wearer to safety if a disaster strikes. Superman comes along and decides to put this product to the test. This all happens in a story called The Man Who Could Cancel Catastrophe. In another story called Sale of the Century, Wilbur thinks he's pulled off a master scam by selling the Earth off to an alien real estate agent until the alien actually comes back, and then of course Superman has to come straighten everything out. This guy is seriously a real piece of work, but we haven't seen him again since 1985. Coming in at number 7, Funny Face. We meet Funny Face in Superman 19 in 1942. Making him possibly the oldest villain on this list. In his story, Case of the Funny Paper Crimes, he brings some villains to life from a comic strip, including Machine Gun Mike and the Black Raider, and he sends these guys out to rob the stores of Metropolis in a super dastardly evil scheme. Just go out there and rob everything, you guys. Superman takes them on one at a time, eventually figuring out what's going on and that they've come from the Funny Pages. While Superman is busy, Funny Face kidnaps Lois Lane and transforms her from a real person into a comic book character. Superman forms up a team with some other comic strip heroes that have been brought to life, and together they rescue Lois and take down the villains. This guy last appeared in 1986, and I seriously hope we see him again. He's crazy looking. Oh man. Number 6, Mr. Mixzipple. Jeez, is that an L in there? Anyway, the name is intended to be unpronounceable. We'll just call him Mixie. First appearing in Superman Volume 2 in 1987, Mixie is an imp from the 5th dimension who periodically visits and gives Superman a hard time. He first appears as a dashing young man by the name of Ben DeRoy and convinces Lois Lane to marry him. Superman eventually puts 2 and 2 together, and the imp agrees to go back home if Superman can get him to type, spell, or say his name backwards. Not Superman's name, but the other guy's crazy name. So, this evil, nefarious dude, he creates a giant typewriter and he makes up a name on the spot, choosing the name I mentioned earlier, figuring, oh, this is gonna be impossible for Superman. Superman defiantly says something along the lines of, "You couldn't even type that name forwards." And so Mixie does it and demonstrates, not realizing Superman has already rewired the typewriter, causing Mixie to write his own name backwards, banishing himself. He once even tried to do nice things, granting people's wishes, but not in the right way. For example, a woman wishes that her dough would finally rise, and it fills her entire home, pouring out onto the street. Another scene has a bunch of people wishing they had a Riverview apartment, so he makes their building sprout legs and literally walk over to the river. This villain did appear in 2008, but I think he still counts as forgotten. And honestly, he's too bizarre for me not to mention. Number 5, Black Rock. First appearing in Justice League America number 43 in 1990, Peter Silverstone was an American scientist, the Director of Research and Technology for the United Broadcasting Company. His task was to create a corporate-backed superhero that the UBC could provide exclusive coverage of. He creates a suit that gives the wearer power over broadcasting frequencies. The suit is powered by a mysterious sentient black stone. Silverstone manipulated his boss and his nephew into wearing the suit before he finally tries it on for himself. Sad to say though, after years and years of butting heads with Superman and losing, he becomes a washed up, failed villain who hangs out with guys like Kite Man. Eventually, he is driven mad by overuse of the Blackstone powers and winds up getting killed by Sam Benjamin, who then steals the stone and becomes the new Blackrock. Number 4, the Prankster. Oswald Loomis first appeared in 1988, the popular host of the Uncle Oswald Show, an early morning children's program. When ratings for his show plummeted and it was cancelled, Oswald totally lost it and went on a pranking spree, terrorizing Metropolis. He once even held Lois Lane hostage and tried to marry her. Later in life, he sells his soul to Lord Satanus, and this changes him, making him young and athletic. He is a manic trickster who uses futuristic technology to create gadgets and weapons, all while retaining a comical theme. This guy doesn't come up as often as other practical joke inspired villains such as Joker and the Riddler, so we haven't seen him for a bit. Number 3, Terra Man. When DC Comics rebooted everything with the New 52 in 2011, this guy was recreated to better suit a modern audience. But in 1972, he first appeared in Superman 249 as Tobias Manning, a desperado cowboy sent into the future. When he was young, he encountered an alien during his first holdup, while his father was recovering from a gunshot wound. The alien decides to take the boy and raise him for himself, taking him off into space and teaching him how to handle futuristic weapons. The alien, known as the Collector, also gave Toby a winged horse named Nova, which became his steed. He calls himself Terra Man and travels with the Collector, robbing and plundering all through space until his memories return, and one day he kills the Collector to avenge his father. He then travels to Earth, where he continues acting like a cowboy and performing nefarious evil deeds. He has some hilarious Western themed gadgets, including an energy lasso and a chewing tobacco capable of aging Superman. Number 2, Dragoran. First appearing in 1971, Dragoran is the man from Transylvania. Transylvania is a miniature planet Superman visits with his friend Jimmy Olsen in Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen, Volume 1. Man, wouldn't it be nice to be Superman's pal? He's literally just a vampire. We think the writers might have been phoning it in a bit on this one. Throughout the story, Superman and Jimmy encounter not only Dragoran, but a werewolf too. I really wish I had more to tell you about this guy, but there is a reason that he's a forgotten villain. And now, number 1, Zavam the Invincible. This dude appeared in Action Comics 351 in 1967. Zavam was created by the god of Olympus after they looked into the future and saw Superman, believing him to be a rival god. Zavam was built from clay and sent off to defeat the Man of Steel. Using godlike powers making him seemingly unstoppable, he becomes the leader of the United Crime Syndicate and humbles Superman. Superman is only able to finally defeat Zavam after collecting a magical belt from another group of gods led by Neptune. Zavam's name is an anagram in reference to the godlike powers he possesses, including Zeus, Hercules, Achilles, and others. He has not reappeared since his defeat, but it would be nice.
Number 10, Mr. Sinister. We were so close to getting Mr. Sinister in a film. He was hinted at in Fox's The New Mutants, which was basically held hostage for quite some time after the merger between Disney and Fox happened, and then when it was released, it didn't do so well. I still feel like there was stuff that was meddled with there, despite Josh Boone swearing that the cut that got released was basically untouched by the studios and was totally his intended cut. I do not buy it. I'm sorry, Josh Boone, I don't believe you. One of the things the film sets up though is a property where Nathaniel Essex could study mutants and even turn them into his weapons under the guise of helping to rehabilitate them. This place was known as the Milbury House, which was of course Mr. Sinister's ancestral home in the comics, and Milbury is actually a name that he uses while traveling abroad in the comics after becoming Mr. Sinister, kind of like one of his undercover names. It was the surname of his wife, Rebecca. It would be really cool to see a movie that solely focuses on Sinister, as he's such a complex character, and recently there's also been a sort of like Jekyll Hyde element added to his origin story that I think could make for a great X-Men horror film spinoff. And considering that's kind of what the New Mutants felt like it was doing, it was like a little bit like teen coming of age as well as a horror film. I really want that to happen. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, do not miss out on all of our cool content. Make sure you click that subscribe button and ring that bell so you get all of our notifications. Number 9, Mr. Freeze. While Mr. Freeze has made a few appearances in live action, he has never had his own solo film. He is one of the most complex villains around, which is why I think he would actually be a pretty admirable candidate overall. Mr. Freeze would be an interesting character to explore, considering he was made to be so altruistic in terms of his reason for villainy, and over the years he's just become more and more and more altruistic. However, some have taken him too far, I would say, to the side of sympathetic villain, and it would be nice to see a film that more finely strikes a balance on kind of where he stands between being a villain but also having his reasons. For those who are unaware, Mr. Freeze isn't just a man obsessed with cryogenics. He's a man and scientist whose interest in cryogenics turned to obsession after his wife Nora was diagnosed with an incurable disease. Rather than lose her, he decided to freeze her until he could find a cure. And there's also been other versions of the story where it's not just about him helping her. She may not even have been his wife. They may have never been married. He might just be obsessed with this woman. So there's lots of layers you could play with there. And his whole goal is apparently to protect Nora, preserve her, protect her, and that tends to be his motivation for turning to crime in terms of how he and his story are depicted in the modern era. Now, whether or not she's actually his wife, you could play with that, I think, in the film. I think it could be interesting. Number 8, Arcade. I was just thinking about Arcade the other day when I was doing a reaction to the new Saw film trailer. It's interesting to me how this idea of playing a game where the stakes are at their most high with lives on the line is kind of a universal concept at this point. We see this idea echoed across various films and projects, a perversion of the concept of a game. Look at Battle Royale, Hunger Games, Squid Game, Saw, fun in games to an extent, Ready or Not, and honestly so many more. Arcade is a villain who embodies this twisted idea. He likes to trap people in his own vicious game, often devising an elaborate maze or landscape of death traps typically known as Murder World. While he's not the most powerful villain out there, he's definitely super interesting, and he represents a concept that people universally seem to be both attracted to and kind of repulsed by, which could make for a very interesting film. Number 7, Kite Man. Kite Man might be flying a little higher now that he's become a fan favorite thanks to his appearance in the Harley Quinn animated series, but we still have yet to get a live action version of this character. Honestly, the Harley Quinn animated series has also left me wanting more Kite Man as well. That combined with the amazing cosplays that I've seen based on that version, it's honestly inspired me to want to see Kite Man on a big screen. I could definitely see Kite Man fitting easily into James Gunn's DCU, that's for sure. So maybe James Gunn will give us a Kite Man movie. That would be kind of interesting. I think people would love it. I think it would be as successful, if not more successful even maybe than Peacemaker. Number 6, Madeline Pryor. Obviously, I can't talk about villains who deserve their own movie without highlighting one of my personal all-time favorites, Madeline Pryor. I also may selfishly want her to have her own film so I can get the chance to play her, but honestly, she's one of the greatest characters out there. So even if it wasn't me but someone else in that role, I would still be just super excited to have her up on the big screen. But Marvel, if you're watching, I have the skills and I would be happy to step into the Queen of Goblin's shoes if you would have me. Why does Madeline Pryor deserve her own film? Because she is one of the most complex villains out there. While she is a clone of Jean Grey, Madeline shies away from letting this define her or her character. And I'd even say there are layers baked into her character in actually relation to Jean and her relationship with her. She resents Jean, but she also admires her, putting her up on a pedestal. She also despises her, but at the same time, Maddie would not exist without her. Like I said, she may be Jean's clone, but that doesn't simplify anything for her character. It actually makes her more complex. Number 5, Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy has always been considered a classic character, and yet we haven't had a live action adaptation of her on the big screen for some time. We've seen her pop in here and there in TV shows, but I'm still waiting for the next big project where she can really soak up the limelight. Ideally, a very lime green limelight. I feel like a solo Poison Ivy film could be a great way to introduce Pam to an even larger audience in 2023 or beyond, and what better time for an eco-terror villain, honestly, or an eco-horror film, perhaps, than right now. Like, this is basically what we're just dealing with on the everyday. So there's a lot you could play with, and I feel like people would be super here for it mentally. Number 4, Destiny. Destiny is a villain that until recently most folks had forgotten about because she was dead. In the films, she doesn't even really exist. And while I didn't mind the weird love triangle turned kind of love square in the X-Men First Class films between Mystique and Magneto and Professor X and Beast, I would like to acknowledge that those films pretty much erased one of Mystique's most important relationships from the comics. If not, I would say the most important relationship. The love between her and her wife, Destiny. Destiny for many years was allied with Mystique, and together they even adopted Rogue, with her being their daughter that they raised together. I would love a feature film that showcases Destiny and also highlights the love story of her and Raven. It would really be nice to have, considering how for so many years comic book censorship actually prevented them from even being a firmly established couple in the comics, despite that always being Chris Claremont's intentions for their relationship with one another. Like, literally, they were supposed to be the moms of Nightcrawler, and then that never happened. It's all censorship, baby. Number 3, Brother Blood. Brother Blood has recently had a comeback in the comics with his reappearance in the current Titan series. He's posing as a reformed villain currently, but I, for one, I'm skeptical about that. Honestly, he's just too good of a villain for him to be reformed in my eyes, and I'm hoping we get to see just how bad he truly ends up being. Fingers crossed. Brother Blood is widely underappreciated, and even the recent live-action version of his character in Titans didn't really stand by himself, with him having direct ties to Trigon, who is his father in the show, instead of just worshipping Trigon. Like, I know he's always been somewhat connected to him, but he wasn't his son before. At least not any version of him that I've known in the comics. I personally feel Brother Blood stands on his own and prefer his own more bloodied past in the comics. I would love to see this version of his story brought to life in a standalone film. Honestly, it'd probably be pretty terrifying. Like, Brother Blood is scary, and he just doesn't get enough hype. Like, he's awesome in a scary way. Number 2, Doctor Doom. I mean, Doctor Doom isn't really so much forgotten by many of us. He is admittedly beloved by so many fans, but when it comes to the MCU, it does feel like he's been forgotten. He's one of the greatest, most complex villains around, and yet we haven't seen a live-action adaptation of him in years. So I'd argue when it comes to the films, at least, he has been forgotten. I would love to see a version of this character as a lead in his own film. Honestly, I don't even think you would actually even need to start with his origin. Doom has such a rich history as a character, there are many points you could feasibly begin his story from and focus on. I'd even say you don't necessarily need to have the Fantastic Four in his film. Now, while the FF did help to shape him, in the modern era, he's very much a villain who stands on his own and who could easily be matched up to fight against any hero. And also you can play with the fact of like him being a villain, but there also being some heroic elements, I would say, to who Doom is at times. Number 1, Clayface. Clayface is one of those villains who I don't think honestly just gets featured enough, and definitely has not been featured enough on the big screen. That is for sure. The interesting thing about Clayface, at least in regards to the main version of the character I'm most familiar with, Basil Karlo, is that he can transform into pretty much anyone he wants, which makes him an exceedingly interesting character in terms of how he could be depicted on the big screen. You could either have a series of different actors playing him as sort of a collective, or one actor who just gets to basically become the master of disguise, which honestly would probably be super fun. Either way, I think he's very intriguing in terms of his abilities. He is also surprisingly complex, having been redeemed a few times over the years, and even becoming, for a time, a member of the Bat family.